You've decided you're ready to become a parent, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with people who feel they have the right to inform you on the correct way to conceive, give birth, what fears you should have, and the proper way to parent. How do you filter through the opinions? How do you know what's trustworthy information and what's a myth or just plain outdated? Welcome to the Birth Ease podcast. Join your host Michelle Smith and her guests as they cut through the noise and fear by sharing valuable tips, tools, and proven methods that help you connect with your own inner wisdom as you navigate the sacred journey that is pregnancy, birth, and parenthood in a more relaxed and confident manner. This podcast does not constitute, nor is it intended, as medical advice.
Hello, Birth Ease families. Welcome to this heartfelt space. I'm your host, Michelle Smith, and I'm incredibly grateful to have with me in this episode, Beatriz Rodrigues. Beatriz is one of my mamas, one of my clients, and I am just so incredibly grateful for our conversation as she shares so openly and candidly her experience as an Afro-Latino mother. Welcome, Beatriz, to the Birth Ease podcast. I am so excited to have you here with me today.
I'm excited as well. This is awesome.
Thank you for being willing to take on this subject that's so heavy on everybody's hearts right now.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, so I want to just give you the space and the platform for you to speak of your experience as a Black mother.
That's very interesting that you say, because everyone's experience as a Black woman is very different. But there are a few things that I feel that all Black women right now in this moment feel and are in solidarity, especially when it comes to being mothers.
Yeah.
One of the things that I can say is that a lot of us, no matter how used to we are of being through trials and tribulations, I would say, we're scared and we're disappointed and we wonder what the future holds for our children.
Yeah. Yeah. As the mother of a multiracial child, I have really been sitting with this and sitting with the prejudice and the barriers that my child will face, can face, that her father faces, that our family faces.
Yeah. And I completely understand because my child's multiracial too. I know you know that I'm an Afro-Latino, or I'm Black and Hispanic, or a Hispanic person that also happens to be Black. And my husband is half Black and half white. So I completely agree. I completely understand where you're coming from. It's pretty unsettling.
It really is. Yeah. So, can you share a bit about your experience in your pregnancy with your daughter?
Absolutely. So I had a fantastic experience my first 2 trimesters because, of course, you were my doula, which was fantastic. I know that this is not a space to brag, but if I can honestly say, I had the best doula, hands down. Someone that was supportive, someone that would listen, someone that was attentive, someone that cared, and someone that brought up a few things that were interesting to me. You knew, and of course, we're going to get a little bit into my pregnancy and my 3rd trimester, but you knew something was off before doctors caught it, before anyone else caught the fact that something was going wrong. You knew, which I find interesting. But my pregnancy, I would say, was flawless for the first 2 trimesters. And then the 3rd trimester, I started experiencing high blood pressure
Mm-hmm.
and experiencing discomfort in regards to the baby. Of course, I went into labor. They forced me to go into labor early. And Shar, which is my daughter, she had an arrhythmia. So there was something also going on with her. But my birthing experience was as polite it could have been because I had you as an advocate. And if there's anything that I would like for your listeners to know is that a doula service is a fantastic service to have, not only because you have someone that you connect with, but also because you have an advocate. You have someone that knows what's right and what's wrong, and how you should be treated. It was my first baby. I didn't know what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable. And until you got there, they had forced me into labor. They had blown up my Foley catheter, which is like a little balloon that they put in your cervix or through your cervix
Mm-hmm.
to open you up slowly. And it's supposed to be a 12 to 18-hour process. And because they overinflated my Foley catheter, I was dilated. I wasn't dilated. I had to use the restroom, and I explained to the nurses that I could not go, that it was very uncomfortable, and they kind of shrugged me off and told me that what I was experiencing was normal or that I was being extreme.
Mm.
So I did what I thought was right, which was push, because I was like, I've never pushed anything, so I guess I have to push on, my bowel movement so everything can go out. And the Foley catheter blew through my cervix 45 minutes into
Mm. Mm.
everything. So, yeah, that was not very pleasant. And of course, I was like 7 centimeters for 2.5 days.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't dilate any further. I think it was because of the trauma, I would say.
Yeah. And the Foley catheter or the Foley bulb, it manually dilates your cervix. You're not necessarily in labor because you're not having contractions. You typically need Pitocin. Sometimes they'll do the bulb catheter with meso, but normally once it falls out, then they'll use Pitocin, which makes labor more difficult, especially when your baby's only, Shar was only 36 weeks, right?
Yes, I was 36 and 4 days
Mm-hmm.
when I went into the
Okay.
hospital. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And you went in because of preeclampsia,
Yeah.
which a lot of us feel like stress it can contribute
Yes.
to developing preeclampsia. And I think our Black mamas just are under more stress in general.
Yes.
And then your job was stressful as well.
I have an extremely stressful job. I work on the other side of the healthcare industry, and at times I'm in charge of, for example, this year I'm in charge of almost 6,000 people. So
Wow.
yes, it's an extremely stressful job. And a lot of people would naturally assume that a preeclampsia is because you weren't taking care of yourself or you were eating inappropriately. And I was the complete opposite. I went vegan for my pregnancy, and I took very good care of myself because I wanted the baby to be healthy. So,
Mm-hmm.
no, not always is preeclampsia because you're not being healthy.
Right. Right. There's a lot of contributing factors to preeclampsia, and diet can be one. But again, many people feel like stress can definitely mitigate it. But some women just develop it in their pregnancy, even under the most ideal of
Circumstances.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they feel like it's the fathers actually contribute to it somehow. Because sometimes if a mama has a baby with the baby has a different father, she doesn't develop preeclampsia. So,
Interesting. That's a very interesting piece of information. Of course, I'm not going to blame CJ for it, but
No.
But yeah.
Yeah. They're still trying to discover all of that from what I understand. So in your labor,
Yes.
do you mind sharing a bit more about the experience?
My labor was once I was, I believe, 2 days in, and Shar was nowhere to be in sight. They broke my water, and I was trying to do a natural birth. Originally, my intention was to have a water birth, but that was
at the birth center.
And that plan did not go through. That's interesting.
Yep.
And then once they broke my water, they watched me for about 16 hours or so. And the baby wasn't coming. I was not dilating any further. And the baby seemed to go in distress. She was stressing out a little bit. So I had a C-section, but I remember previous to that, I was very uncomfortable, and they kept offering me an epidural, and I wasn't particularly for it, but they said, if it's going to help her, then it's going to help me. And they were like, of course, because you're going to calm down, so the baby's going to calm down. So I had an epidural, and maybe 8 hours later, I had a C-section.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sometimes it can help bring down your blood pressure. Sometimes it can be a good tool, but it's just hard when essentially your body's not ready and we need to help the baby to be born. But I don't have the statistic off the top of my head, which I should. But, how many babies are born prematurely to Black women and women of color?
It's staggering numbers. And I asked if I was able to hold the baby and keep the baby right away, and they said yes. But because Shar had an arrhythmia, which is a heart condition where your heartbeat is irregular, they took her right from me. I wasn't able to breastfeed right away. Of course, I was on fentanyl, so I did not want to breastfeed. But I got off the fentanyl quite quickly. I was really determined to breastfeed and connect with my child.
So they had you on fentanyl afterwards for pain relief? Okay. With breastfeeding and stuff, fentanyl doesn't really interfere, so they say, or did you feel like it does?
I just wanted to make sure that I was under no influences, that nothing could pass down to the baby. That was my major concern. But I definitely was able to get up there quite quickly. They were like, they were very amused at the fact that I told them that I did not want any pain medication, so I can go see the baby as soon as possible.
Wow.
That was very interesting.
Wow. So how did you manage that? Just determination? Like that's a big thing to.
Yes.
After major surgery.
Yes. I would like to clarify. Black women do feel pain the same way that everyone else feels pain.
Yeah.
Let's get that across. We bleed the same, we feel pain the same way, we get angry the same way, and we have cravings the same way. It's just that, to me, for me to connect with Shar was so important. I just could not fathom doing all this work for almost 10 months. In my case, it was 9 months, and not being able to hold her, not being able to look into her and speak greatness into her. It was just such a difficult thought. And when you are on heavier drugs, you are not allowed to get up out of bed for almost 24 hours when your baby is in NICU.
Mm-hmm.
I needed everything out because I needed to see my baby.
Mm.
That was all.
Mm. So, did you end up just using ibuprofen?
Yes, at times, and I was even scared to use ibuprofen. They would tell me, don't worry, that doesn't affect the baby. But even then, I didn't want to take the ibuprofen unless I was in a lot of pain, and then I would take it.
Wow. That's a testament to what we mamas will do for our babies.
Oh, absolutely. And how powerful the mind is
Mm. Yeah.
when you want something so bad, you will do whatever it takes to get it, even if it's pain.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can you share with the listeners how long you were in the hospital and how your treatment was while she was in the nursery in the NICU?
Um, well, I was in the hospital almost 6 days,
Mm.
7 days. Shar was in the hospital 14 days. The treatment that I received, some nurses were extremely kind. I actually had a nurse that she explained to me that her son, because I remember I would cry and I was just so stressed out, and they wouldn't let me leave the hospital because my blood pressure wouldn't go down, but my blood pressure wouldn't go down because I was stressed out that my daughter was in NICU.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just couldn't, I don't know how to explain it, but the feeling of just knowing that I could not walk out with my baby like everyone else broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And she explained to me that
Yeah.
that moment would be momentary, and that one day I would be running in the yard with her and I would not remember the feeling of not being able to hold her for that first moment or hold her immediately, or not being able to go home with her. And she explained to me her story and how her son had cancer,
Mm.
and she she explained to me that every moment was precious, and at times she would forget how sick he was because you're just trying to treasure those beautiful moments. So I can honestly say that I had excellent care from some nurses, and some nurses were very cold and very nasty with me. At one point, when I was getting off the medication, I got really sick and I was trying to call in a nurse. But, while I was calling the nurse, I had an incident, and she was extremely rude, extremely nasty. She was like, "Why would you do that? Like, why would you not even call me?" And I was like, "I did. I tried the best that I could. I tried to stop, but I couldn't." So, you can get both ends of the spectrum per se with everyone.
Yeah. And I think that can be across the board for everyone. Do you feel like you faced any racial disparities while you were in the hospital?
I would like to say that I truly didn't, but I know that I did. I did not want to make this pregnancy and my lack of good care or my lack of good experience because of the color of my skin, which breaks my heart. But I feel that if anybody tells you, hey, I think that you should check this, something's not right, you shouldn't say, oh, well, that's normal. You are okay. It's not that serious. You shouldn't say that to anyone.
So to not discount someone's feelings. Yeah.
Absolutely. Why would you do that to anyone? I'm not a junkie. I'm well educated. I'm hardworking. I'm a good person. Believe it or not, I didn't want to give birth in the hospital. This was not my choice.
Right.
So if it would have been my choice, there wouldn't have been a Foley catheter.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with that. So the fact that I'm doing this against my will because you guys are telling me that this could potentially save not only my life but my child's life, which was my number one prerogative,
Mm-hmm.
I did it. So if I'm telling you, hey, something doesn't feel right, it's uncomfortable, please, can you check? You shouldn't shrug me off.
Mm-hmm. I'm just sitting with that because as a doula, it always upsets me when women aren't listened to. Yeah, I need to push. No, it's too soon. Oh, this is hurting me. And when it's just discounted, it's really upsetting to me
The thing,
when that happens.
but the thing is that your body knows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in full belief that your body is self-healing. How is it that you can get a cut or a bruise and the next day you don't have it, or it scabs over, or it turns from black and blue to green, and then it starts healing itself? So if your body is telling you, hey, something's uncomfortable, there is discomfort here, there's dis-ease here, first of all, I don't believe anybody would choose to feel that. And
Mm-hmm.
second of all, I don't think that anybody would voice something is absolutely wrong unless it is. Because the last thing you actually want to think about when you're pregnant and you're about to have a baby before time is something is
Mm-hmm.
wrong. All you want to hear is everything's perfect, everything's peachy, everything's normal. So if you feel that something's not normal, it should definitely not be discounted.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So you all got home and your sweet girl is doing well. Yes.
Yes, she is perfect. She's going to be 2. That's creepy all in itself. I had her yesterday. How is she going to be 2? You
I
know?
know.
And she's talking and she's running around, which is amazing. It's incredible to see the development. It's insane.
It's so fun. It really is. It's so fun. It's a lot of work, but it's so much fun.
It is a lot of work. I thought work was work, but I rather 6,000 people than having to take care of a 2-year-old tell you no. You know, I saw a meme the other day that said that taking care of a toddler is 50% trying to prevent the toddler from killing themselves, and 50% of the time is trying to console the toddler because you did not let them kill themselves.
Themselves. Oh my gosh. Yes. That's so funny. That's
And
so
that's
funny.
that's exactly what it is. That should be on a t-shirt. Anybody wants a business idea? That's a t-shirt right there.
Yeah. Yeah. They are. They're so much fun though.
They are.
I love 2-year-olds. I love them. I'm going to switch from your sweet girl. What do you want to share with the listeners regarding being a Black mother? What would you like to share? What would you like we birth workers to know?
I would like, first of all, to share with the listeners that we have the majority of the same worries. We want the best education, the best health care. We want to send our children with the best intentions onto the world. Like right now, I'm looking into a Montessori school. My child has not been to daycare. My child eats only organic foods. And yeah, it's a little bit of a financial sacrifice, but that's what she gets. And as much as we do have different concerns, like possibly, coming out or trying to do the most basic of things and not coming home is definitely a worry. My biggest worry right now is that my husband, he's thinking about potentially having number two. And that's very difficult to think about, especially with what I went through at the hospital and knowing that I'm not going to have you around because I moved 2,300 miles away. And
we're gonna do virtual doula services. It can
hey,
work.
that's a business right there.
Well, and that's really what we're having to do right now. Because of COVID, we can't go into the hospitals. At least here in Orlando, we can't. And I don't want to make it about me because it's not about me. It's about my families. But
No,
it is really breaking my heart that I can't be there physically
it's
with my families. But I'm so proud of all my mamas, all my families. They are doing so beautifully through this.
it's truly breaking their hearts because they don't have that advocacy there. And there are some of them that they might know what's normal, but then there's some that don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been doing a lot of texting and we can video chat if we need to. And in the times that they've had to call me, it's been really great because the nurses, they've been so helpful. Like we've been having discussions about how the situation could be handled and giving each other input. And that has been really wonderful, I have to say. It really has. It's been a collaborative in this difficult time. So,
Well, if baby number two comes, then you're booked. But that is a concern of mine, of my children growing up in a world like the one that I live in today.
yeah, understandably.
As a Black mother, I think we all want the best care. And I think that, I don't know if you touch on this in other situations, but we need not only to be heard, but we need more prenatal care. We need more natural medicine or different types of medicine available in communities of color or impoverished neighborhoods where they feel that they have all their options available.
I think that's part of the problem is so many families of color, Black mamas, they have difficulty finding or having access to prenatal care.
Absolutely. And me working in the insurance industry, I also know that there are a lot of doctors that it's really difficult for them financially for them, but also for the doctors. Those are for the doctors that do, but a lot of doctors don't want to take any insurance that is of low income. So Medicaid, a lot of doctors don't want to take Medicaid. They don't want to practice in low income neighborhoods because of safety or what they feel is safety. So I think that to a certain extent, not to get into much politics, but I think that we need to start getting, or there should be a motivational or an incentive. That is the word, an incentive for excellent doctors, for the top rated doctors to start moving into less fortunate areas. I'm a little bit more fortunate because I do have a really good job and my husband has a really good job. So, we're a little bit more fortunate. But also, what if I was a single mom and not because my husband left me, but because something happened to him? Look at COVID. What if he got COVID and passed away? Knock on wood, that wouldn't happen to me or to anyone else that is listening. But what if that was their case?
I worked with a mama recently whose partner died in a car accident.
Oh, that is so difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some mamas are single by choice. They choose to be single mothers.
And that is phenomenal, and I applaud them because that's not an easy choice. That was going to be my choice if I had not met my husband. But I did meet my husband, right? And your income could be affected if you do lose your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to re-strategize because everything you've known to be true about your lifestyle no longer is. So I think that I want healthcare professionals to understand that not everybody that walks in through your door is in their situation because they chose that situation.
Right.
That what we honestly want is your help because, like many other professions, your profession is to serve and protect us as women that are in a vulnerable position because we're going through one of the most stressful, most difficult, and most beautiful moments in our lives. And we're putting not only our lives in your hands, but our children's lives in your hands.
Yeah. There's so many nuances to all of this. And it's just I don't I don't have words because it's such a there's no easy answers.
There isn't.
And the issues and the barriers go back for hundreds of years.
It's a very difficult topic because it is systemic. That's what makes it so difficult because it's not just hospital care. So what if we fix our hospital system and where everybody's getting the perfect care because robots take care of us, right? Because at that point, no one can have a bias. What are we going to train the robot to have a bias? No, that's not the idea, right? So, okay, we eliminate that issue, but now we have to worry about health-wise because this person didn't grow up in a neighborhood that had access to care. So when they do get the care, it's too late. So the problem's too big. Or something basic like nutrition. How does someone grow a healthy baby if they don't have the correct nourishment
Mm-hmm.
or the right amount of nourishment? And what do you do in food deserts like Memphis, Tennessee? Memphis, Tennessee is the biggest food desert in the United States, where they don't have any grocery stores that sell fresh produce in about 15 miles.
Wow.
People can't walk 15 miles, logically speaking, and a lot of them can't. So, yes, it's a very difficult topic. There's very many different layers to it, but if anyone can help and do the right thing, then slowly but surely we start getting to a better place.
Can you give some examples of what you would say for doing the right thing? Because sometimes there's some people that don't want to do the right thing. The internet is full of that. But for people that genuinely, I mean, it just is. It just is. They just want to spew nastiness and hatred. But for the people that genuinely,
Okay.
like you want to find a way to help, or for birth workers that are not someone of color,
Okay.
where to start?
Okay.
Where to start?
That's a good question. I would say being in tune, understanding the culture. For example, culturally, it is normal for us to say it is okay when things are not okay.
Mm,
Things could be crumbling around us, and we're like, no, we're fine. Everything's okay. Which is, of course, not a good thing, but that's what we naturally do because that's a coping mechanism for us. Because odds are we're not going to get the help. So, and when we do get the help, it's sometimes backhanded help. So a lot of people choose not to receive help. So if a healthcare worker feels that something is truly not right, then I think it's time for the healthcare worker to truly say, hey, I understand. I understand that it may seem that things are okay, but I'm working on your behalf. I only want your well-being. I want your baby to be here and get here healthy. And I feel that there's something genuinely not right. And this is why. These are the symptoms you have. These symptoms could equal this or could equal that. And I really would like if we got this looked at because I genuinely care. I genuinely care about your baby. And there's something about the look in someone's eye and the sound in their voice that if they're really genuine, there's a piece of us that not only is at ease, but is mortified because then we know that something isn't right and something needs to either change or needs to happen in order to save our lives and save our children's lives.
Yeah, so as you're speaking on this, it sounds like listening to the mama, to the family, and creating a relationship, taking that time to listen.
That is exactly it.
And create that.
That is exactly it, because I think that the strongest relationships is when you actually listen. You actually get to know the person, get to know their intentions, get to know what their fears are. You remember that one of my first visits, we were talking about vaginal birth. And you were like, there's nothing you need to be afraid of. I was mortified. I wasn't going to let you know that. But I was mortified. And you told me your experience and what had happened to you. And you told me that there are certain things that happen that are normal and that's okay. That you don't stay, there's this misconception that when you give birth, that your vaginal canal stays the same way, the same size, you never go back. Everything's just going to fall out of you afterwards. Your body, your rolls, you're never going to have a flat stomach again, And we're
all the shame and the fear around our vaginas and our bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is you honestly are not afraid of that when you're 8 centimeters dilated. You don't care. You're just like, get this baby out of me. Please, somebody. You want to reach? Because I'm ready. And it's amazing what actually worries you when you're in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that when you do build a relationship, at one point I was like, listen, yes, I am mortified at this, but I'm going to still try, right? And you were like, please don't be mortified. Hey, there's, these creams, there's the stuff that you can put, there's a massage that you can, is it the perineal?
The perineal massage.
Yes.
Yeah. And just the understanding that your body's meant to open.
Yes.
Our bodies are meant to do this. And we don't get told that.
Your body's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to snap back like you used to. Some people do, right? Kudos to them and kudos to their surgeon, because I know the truth. Please, under the comments below, leave the name of your surgeon. But I know personally that your body doesn't ever go back to looking exactly the same. And no matter what you do, that's okay. And you have to be kind to yourself because you did the most amazing and the most miraculous thing there is on this planet Earth. And it was to make, grow, and give birth to a baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just too much shame around our bodies and too many expectations about how we're supposed to look and how soon we're supposed to recover. And that's across the board for
Oh,
women.
and there's an unrealistic expectation that postpartum is going to be right after you drop the baby. Oh no. Postpartum can come a year after you drop the baby. You give birth, everything's great. A year later, there are just some things that aren't right.
Mm-hmm. Like postpartum depression and
Exactly.
emotions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know for myself, I experienced postpartum depression around 18 months with my girls. And normally they say within the first year, but other people will say within the first 2 years, especially if you're still nursing a child.
You know that, ironically enough, there are some days that I just feel strangely sad because I'm still taking my placenta pills.
Mm,
And there are just some days that I feel like, yes, I need my placenta pill. I need a little pep
hmm
because I know I'm sad. I'm losing my baby. She's not a baby anymore. She's 2 going on 22, and my life is changing, of course, for the better. So many things are going on, and that's normal. And I don't think that a lot of people get to hear that.
hmm
Also, a common misconception in the Black community. Guys, if you feel depressed, please get help. Talk to someone. I can speak as a Black woman. I remember that I spoke to my family members and I was just like, hey, I don't feel that, I feel like there's something off. And they were like, no, you're perfectly fine. There's no such thing as X and Y and Z or depression or sadness. You're happy. Your life is perfect. You have food. You're good.
mm,
So that's very important, not only to speak about physical health as healthcare workers, but speak about emotional and psychological help.
yeah. And to do your best to be, if you're not a Black woman or a woman of color, to be culturally sensitive about it.
Absolutely.
And again, and listen.
Absolutely. I remember that at one point I came to you because, of course, my child does not, she looks like me in phenotype or like my facial features, right? She looks like me,
Mm-hmm.
but her hair color, her skin color, she doesn't look like me. She looks like her dad, and her dad is fair skinned and has light hair and light eyes. And I remember that I was getting a lot of backlash from all communities because, I'm walking around with a child that doesn't look like me. And I remember I came to you and you were so understanding. And you told me about one of your experiences. And I was just like, oh, okay, I guess this is normal.
Yeah, the experience is that one of my mamas, she is from Panama and has very beautiful dark skin and has this very beautiful dark skinned little girl. And she had some circumstances going on. And my family and I, we were taking care of the baby for her. She would have to work for several days at a time, and she was having trouble finding someone to take care of this sweet girl. And we love that sweet girl. But we would be going out in public, and it was such this weird situation of people, looking at
I
you like, what are
love
you
your
doing, white woman, with
I
that
love
black
your
baby?
appropriate language. You said weird. That's very kind words to what they're really looking you as. You know how many times I get asked if I'm a babysitter?
Wow.
Um,
Yeah. Which I was, but some people would just, I, it was the most surreal experience because some people from the islands, I found overall, were like, one day my daughter, she was only 16, maybe 16, 17. She was holding this sweet girl in the sling, and a family from the islands came over and they were like, "Oh, your baby's just beautiful." And my daughter is very
yes,
pale skinned, and and he was like, "Oh, your baby's beautiful," and never even
batted an eye.
thought a thing about it.
Yeah.
Yep. And then other people would look at her if she was holding her, if I was holding her, and I don't have words at the moment.
I can only imagine. Interesting is my favorite. Peculiar is the correct word for
Yeah.
that. And I definitely understand because, of course, my family's from the islands. So, ironically enough, Shar looks like my family. I'm the one that doesn't look like I'm part of my family or my brothers, but Shar looks like she fits in perfectly into my family with her red curly hair and her fair skin.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting experience. Oh, that's a perfect point. Please be modest. People come in so many different shapes and colors, and their situations could be different. Because they show up to the doctor's office without male presence doesn't mean that they're single. They still could be
Mhm.
married. CJ was working 16 hours, and I've had to go to the doctors and they're like, "Oh, we do have these programs." And I'm like, I don't qualify. You know? Or
Mhm. That assumption.
or, when you go to the doctor's office, don't ask if that baby is yours.
Right.
Just ask for the documents. That's okay. Okay, do you have her social, her birth certificate, and your ID? And you can cross reference, right? But don't ask if that's your baby. No, please don't. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I just got it was the most it was almost, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I really don't. It was almost a social experiment. Like, it opened my eyes so much to be walking around with this sweet girl. I was like auntie that I loved like my own. I treated her like my own. And she was part of our family. When we would take care of her for days at a time for her mom. And we're still close. But it opened my eyes to the way that people, their perceptions and the looks, and what people of
Go
color
through.
are
Yeah.
facing. Yeah. And I just got a glimpse. I can't understand it fully at all. And in my daughter's father's family, there's just all these beautiful variances of skin color because they're from the islands.
Well, you know what I think is a very interesting experience that I think that you and also CJ can kind of relate to is what people feel comfortable allowing you to know about how they feel
Mm,
about people of color because they don't know your situation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That has to be very interesting, especially when it comes to birthing. That must be a very interesting experience.
Yeah. It goes along with, working with families, same sex families. People will share their views without knowing your own. So,
You know, that has to be very difficult. And, I applaud all excellent healthcare workers that know how to keep not a facade, but they know how to keep their cool in all aspects and occasions, because I tip my hat off to you.
or if you say something, I mean, I'm sure that I have said things over the years that maybe offended somebody, but to have that relationship, to be able to, "Oh, I'm sorry, was I did not mean to offend you," or, "Oh, I made this assumption and I was wrong," and own it, and
Right.
how can I clean that up?
Well, I think that it's also about the honesty and the sincerity that someone comes to you with, right?
Mhm.
Because if you genuinely not think that I'm single, but genuinely possibly think, or you offer help to everyone, right? Then who am I to get offended, right? You offer the help across the board. Hey, I don't know what your financial situation is, but if you need it, there's help here,
Mhm.
for example, or hey, I don't know what the proper term is, but how can I best assist you in your situation? It comes across very much genuine, and it's a lot easier to say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with that, and know that that person's not going to continue down that path ever again, than if you know that that person's not being genuine and they did it with all the intention to offend you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they're just not willing to look at their own biases.
That's right. And I mean, all of us have our own biases. We all do. And we all have to work on our biases, right? But it's how do we display our bias? And how much does it affect the people around us when we display our bias?
Yeah. So there's a humility involved and a just genuinely wanting to understand somebody's situation.
That's exactly it. That you hit the nail on the head, Michelle.
Yeah. And sometimes I think too in our healthcare system, the way, like as a doula and teaching my classes privately, I have the luxury to get to know my families. And it's a luxury. And often in a clinic where you get to see a mama for maybe 5 minutes, how can you even form a relationship? And there's 18 different doctors in the practice or something. It's difficult to even form a relationship.
Out of curiosity, do you think that there ever could be a practice where only one physician sees one patient?
Um, there some midwives practice that way and some physicians do. Yeah, yeah. But then, you can get burned out caregivers too because they're on call all the time. So what do you see is could be some of the solutions? And I know it's a big, big issue with so many nuances, but what do you see could be places to start? What some solutions?
You know, you honestly are making me think about this. I think that if we had more doulas of color,
Mhm.
that would work.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of the times, if you find people you sympathize with or you see yourself in their shoes, you're more likely to sympathize with them, right? Or advocate for them. I think that, and that means not only are they helping you as someone that's giving birth, but in the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
If more doulas had more contact with doulas of color, then in a professional manner, they could find things that they could share, right? Because I feel that even in my job, it's very difficult to come to someone that needs your help and say, oh, how do I help you? But I might be able to ask one of my peers and say, hey, in this situation, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I see this. How do I handle this? And
Mm-hmm.
granted, not every Black person can speak for the whole diaspora, right? I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for everyone, and nor can a Black doula speak on behalf of all Black women. But at the same time, there are some cultural differences that if you ask someone else that is in your profession, you can ask, hey, how did you handle this?
Mm-hmm.
And it could greatly help. Another thing that would be great is if we had a health care reform, a real health care reform. Yes, the reform we had was substantial and it did help a lot, but I would like to see naturopathy. I would like to see doulas covered under your insurance.
Mm-hmm. Some are starting to, but yeah, to have it more universal.
I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. Even cover midwifery care and birth centers and to cover them or home birth.
I still don't understand why home births or birth centers are not covered. I still don't. I don't get it because you could get it. If we can get a physician to go to your house to give you care, right? Because my grandparents used to receive care in their house by a physician. Why can't you give birth at home?
It's political.
Understood.
There's some political things there, I think. Um, and from what I understand, there's a lot of people don't feel home birth is safe, and that affects the insurance companies. And I don't know all the ins and out of it, but I would say that there's a political aspect
I definitely.
because financially it doesn't make sense
Right.
because the amount that a home birth or a birth center costs an insurance company is much less than a hospital birth,
Now I.
especially if you're induced for 3 days, not in a situation like yours where you're very sick with preeclampsia. We need to take care of you. You need to be in the
Right.
hospital, but just, you're 39 weeks pregnant and let's have a baby. That that has to cost insurance companies so much money.
Man, let me tell you, if you only knew. L- hmm. Well, my birth cost so much money that they required me to have a a care coordinator
Mm,
just to make sure that the claims that my doctor's offices were processing were actual claims.
wow.
They would call me to make sure that I really went to the doctor or that my daughter really went to the doctor and how many times she went to the doctor because that's how much money it cost.
Wow.
They had a caseworker working on my case because it looked almost fraudulent. That's how much money it cost. So home births sound like it would be a less gainful situations for hospitals. So I can see why it's probably not covered or why it would be very
Yeah.
political. But I think that would help a lot. It would help the community. Sometimes what people consider or what how do I put this? What the government would not want to happen may actually be something good.
Yeah, we need some kind of, again, I don't think there's any easy answers, but I think with everything going on currently, the places where our institutions, our hospitals, where they're failing is really being magnified.
Hmm, that's a fact.
And a lot of families are wanting to turn to home birth because they're not feeling safe in the hospital because of COVID and things like that. But
Yeah.
and it's important, planning a birth center birth. It's important to be educated though and to make that decision, weighing the pros and cons and not just doing it out of fear. It needs to be made consciously and
Yes.
thoughtfully.
You have to do a lot of research.
Mhm.
A lot of research. And I would say that you have to do the right thing. And I always say do the right thing. So let me explain. As a mama, when things start going wrong and the birth plan that you have may not be going the way that you did plan, sometimes it's okay to let go and do what would be right for your health and for the health of your baby.
Mhm.
And that's okay.
Mhm.
It took me a
Yeah.
lot of time to come to terms with that.
Yeah, well, it's hard when you go from the word that's coming to me is such an intimate relationship with your midwife, and then all of a sudden you have to transfer to the hospital, and then you're surrounded by strangers.
Yes,
And who can you trust?
yes. But I can say that I'm very thankful that my surgeon, an obstetrician, he did a fantastic job. I truly can't complain, and he had a fantastic sense of humor because you know me. I have a very interesting sense of humor, especially under the influence of drugs. I kept telling him to give me a tummy tuck. I was like, make sure I look good. And all he would do was laugh because I was awake for it. I wasn't completely asleep.
Mhm.
So it was, it could have been worse, but it also could have been better. But I'm here. My baby's healthy. I mean, I'm elated. I'm elated that I've made it, that my baby's over one. That's a really rough year,
Mhm.
the first year, and I really had fantastic help like yours. I truly appreciate you. And you know
Oh,
that, Michelle. I can't say that enough.
oh, well, thank you. You know how much I love you all. You do.
Me too.
So, if you had one piece of wisdom, one last thought that you'd like to leave the families with, or a birth worker that's listening, what would that be?
I would say that to my families, to the families that will be having a baby, I would say trust yourself. You know if something is not okay, and it's okay to voice that, and it's okay to stick by your guns. And if someone's not listening to you, get someone else that will listen to you, because it is imperative that if in your core you know that something is not right, that someone checks and it's not pushed to the side or put on a back burner. It's imperative. Your life is important. And to healthcare workers, I would say keep doing a fantastic job. It's being a healthcare worker is not easy. Most of my friends are healthcare workers, and I only know how hard it is. Personally working, of course, in another branch of the healthcare field, but just listen. And for some reason, I have a feeling that as healthcare workers, you also know when something's not right. So if you have a visceral reaction to something, or in your heart of hearts, you know that you need to be listening, just take the time. Even if you're wrong, it's better to be wrong and to have prevented something bad from happening than actually being right to your feelings and being right to the feelings of your mamas and something bad happens.
Yeah, to just brush that thought aside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is better to address it. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you for taking this time and allowing us to explore this sensitive subject right now. I mean, I think we touched on so many things. Our intention is to create that space where we can all begin to honor one another and listen and do our best to set our own biases aside so that we can be part of the solution.
I feel so highly blessed to have been on your show today. Thank you for allowing me the space.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And thank you all for listening. And remember to trust your gut. You know yourself and your baby better than anyone.
For more great conversations like these, or to find out more information and access Michelle's library of amazing guests, go to birtheaseservices.com/podcast. For more information on the Birth Ease method, Michelle's classes, meditations, and other services, go to birtheaseservices.com.